Vladimir Putin is reportedly near death as he prepares the largest Russian military offensive since World War II, Michael Snyder reports. Will Vladimir Putin launch the largest military operation that the world has seen in decades in a desperate attempt to win the war in Ukraine before he dies? And if Russia does conduct such an offensive, how will the US and Ukraine's other Western allies respond? The US financial support for Ukraine is now approaching $100 billion, and it does not seem likely that our leaders in Washington will just throw their hands up in the air and give up after having invested so much in the war. The US politicians have repeatedly told us that we are in it to win it, and so the Russian victory in Ukraine cannot be permitted under any circumstances. But if both sides just keep escalating matters, it won't be too long before we find ourselves on the brink of a nuclear conflict. According to Daily Mail, the head of military intelligence in Ukraine believes that Vladimir Putin is terminally ill with cancer. Vladimir Putin is terminally ill with cancer and will die very soon, Ukraine's military intelligence head was claimed as saying. Kirilo Budanov, without providing evidence, said he knows the Russian despot's death is imminent due to an ongoing illness from cancer. When asked how soon Putin might die, Budanov stated that he thinks that it will be coming very fast. Asked when he thinks Putin's death will come, Budanov said that he thought it would be very soon. I think very fast, I hope, he said. Speculation about Putin's death has been ongoing for several years. The 70-year-old Russian leader has been rumored to be suffering from cancer, Parkinson's disease, and numerous other ailments. Reading that article really got my attention because I have an entire chapter in my new book that's dedicated to talking about Vladimir Putin's coming death. Right now, Putin is surrounded by officials that are even more hawkish than he is. Many in the Western world will greatly rejoice when Putin dies, but the truth is that whoever replaces Putin will almost certainly be less inclined to engage in peace talks. If our leaders are wise, they would be pushing for peace talks with Russia while Putin is still around. Unfortunately, this is not going to happen. At this point, the Russians realize that this war is going to drag on until someone makes a really big move to end it. In recent weeks, the Russians have been mobilizing large numbers of troops and vast amounts of military equipment in Belarus. Joint military exercises are being conducted, and many are concerned that the stage is being set for something really big. Russia and Belarus have expanded their joint military training exercise. In Belarus, the country's defense TV channel said on Sunday, as concern grows that Moscow is pressuring its closest ally to join the war in Ukraine. The two countries added weapons, soldiers, and specialized equipment to the exercises and were doing drills drawing on Russian experience in Ukraine, Reuters reported. On Friday, the Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko visited a military base where Russian troops are stationed to meet troops and discuss the joint military drills. In fact, Reuters recently suggested that the Russians could soon launch a new ground invasion of Ukraine from the north. As we know, Belarus is basically the border with Ukraine, just north of the capital of Ukraine, Kiev. Now, Russia and Belarus have beefed up their joint military grouping in Belarus with weapons, soldiers, and specialized equipment, and plan to hold joint aviation drills, the Belarusian Defense Ministry said on Thursday. Ukraine has repeatedly warned that President Vladimir Putin may try to use Belarus to launch a new ground invasion of Ukraine from the north, a step that would open a major new front in the war. If the Russians do conduct such an invasion, it won't be with a limited number of troops like we saw at the beginning of the war. Back then, the Russians intended to force Ukrainians to the negotiating table, and obviously that did not work. If the Russians decide to pull the trigger on another invasion, this time it will be a hammer blow of overwhelming force. Hundreds of thousands of Russian troops would come pouring in from the north, and I believe that they would attempt to completely cut off the flow of arms and mercenaries from Ukraine's Western allies. Now the ground in Ukraine is freezing. The next couple of months would provide an ideal time for a major new Russian offensive. We will just have to wait and see whether it actually happens or not. But what we do know is that social media is filled with videos of Russian tanks and military vehicles being shipped into Belarus by train. The forces being gathered are much larger than the forces that Russia deployed during the initial invasion of Ukraine. And it's being reported that Russia and Belarus will be holding joint tactical Air Force exercises from January 16 to February 1st. Russia and Belarus will be conducting joint tactical Air Force exercises from January 16 to February 1st, Belarusian officials announced. Belarus has been Russia's closest ally since the Ukraine invasion more than 10 months ago. Could such exercises actually be used as a cover for something else? That is something to think about. And if Putin does make a massive move to try and end the war, what will the U.S. do in response? We're getting into very dangerous territory. As General Clemente has warned, the longer the war in Ukraine lasts, the more likely it is that it will result in a nuclear conflict. General Celente has said for months that contrary to reports that the U.S. is now a proxy war with Russia, Washington is currently at war with the Kremlin. He said it will only become official after the first nuclear flash or disastrous false flag event. Weeks before the first Russian tank rolled into Ukraine, Biden brushed off the idea that the U.S. troops would get involved in the conflict and went as far as to say that they would not even assist in evacuations. He said flatly that an American presence could spark a world war. The longer the war lasts, the higher the probability that it will produce a nuclear exchange. Our leaders should have tried to find a peaceful way out of this mess while it was still possible. Now Putin appears to be getting ready to push all of his chips to the middle of the table, and James Rickards has aptly observed that we seem to be sleepwalking into a nuclear confrontation unless we wake up. The great danger could arise if the U.S. foolishly continues escalation to the bitter end in order to stave off a Ukrainian defeat. I'm not predicting it'll happen, but things could escalate to the point where tactical nuclear weapons are employed out of desperation. From that point, it's a short step towards the broader use of strategic nuclear weapons. Again, I'm not specifically predicting it'll happen, but it's a realistic possibility based on the logic of escalation, and we seem to be sleepwalking into a nuclear confrontation unless we wake up. Will we wake up? Very well said. Will we wake up in time? I truly hope so, because the alternative is unimaginable. It's finally here. Michael Snyder's new book entitled End Times, now available in paperback, finally, and for Kindle on Amazon. About the author, he says, my name is Michael. This is written by Michael Snyder, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of Future America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life that truly matters, that really matters, commissions earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies of gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the Most Important News, and the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with us is definitely great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. This is by Michael Snyder on End of the American Dream. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box